Hello, I am Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be talking about the loot box controversy as well as how it's affecting the REM Renewal that is happening in Puzzles and Dragons. So, over the past several months, there's been quite a significant spotlight being placed on video games that utilize a loot box currency system. Now, this loot box system has drawn negative attention because it can be associated with promoting gambling, because you would purchase a loot box and you open up a randomized assortment of loot for said specific game, and you may not even get what you want, so you could be spending money and not actually having the return that you are expecting, so to speak. So this can almost be considered like gambling, and obviously a lot of these games that utilize loot box platforms have audiences that are minors, so it's drawn a lot of negative attention in Europe, and then there has been a reaction for European laws as well as Apple at the same time. So basically this article will be describing what loot boxes are, why it's caused a controversy, and how it's going to impact Puzzle and Dragons moving forward. So what are loot boxes? So loot boxes are basically an umbrella term for basically boxes that contain randomized rewards for said specific game. And if you play anything that's a gacha style game like Puzzles and Dragons, it's really just a loot box form. Instead of us opening a box, we're opening an egg. Same idea. We have a randomized reward, no control over it. And regardless of what kind of loot is distributed, they can be generally placed into two distinct categories: cosmetic in nature and progression oriented in nature. So loot boxes are not a new concept. They have been around for quite some time. Like Puzzle and Dragons is over 5 years old, for instance, so we know for sure it's over 5 years old. So they have existed for a period of time, and a lot of video games have been shifting towards a loot box monetization platform. And these games usually claim to be free to play, and then you can buy loot boxes or extra items basically to help your progression or cosmetically. And the main reason why it's drawn a lot of negative criticism is because EA and their Star Wars Battlefront game basically is a game where you had to pay up front to play, and then you had to pay to unlock more content. So it's not the exact same as a freemium game. Like, this is like a completely different concept, so to speak. There's a pay to purchase game, and then you get to have to buy loot boxes to unlock more of the game. So that triggered a lot of people, like, because of it's a big franchise and a big video game company, so it drew a lot of negative attention and spotlight. But before I dive a bit further into that, I'm going to talk about what cosmetic loot boxes are. So cosmetic loot box rewards are basically any item that pops out that basically enhances the prettiness of your character. It could be like giving you like extra skins, extra colors, or whatever that changes the physical appearance. It could be like the menu overview, like what you can think of, whatever you can think of, it could exist for a cosmetic loot box upgrade. And cosmetic upgrades like this, they are not needed to actually play the game to its fullest extent. You just look prettier. You may feel better about yourself, but it's not going to help. It's not like gatekeeping you from accessing certain content in the game. It's basically just a way to look nicer. And overall, this type of loot box is the healthier kind. So for example, games like Overwatch, you purchase the game to play, and then you still can buy loot boxes, but all their loot boxes contain are cosmetic items. So it's not going to enhance your overall gameplay. You have everything unlocked as soon as you purchase the game. So this type of loot box is reasonably healthy. You can earn them by playing the game, of course, and you can buy more just to hasten the chances of you acquiring the skin you actually desire. Now, the main problem is progression-oriented loot boxes. So progression-oriented rewards basically is anything that helps improve your overall gameplay experience. It either could be unlocking new game modes, say like new weapons, new commanders, new characters, basically anything that's going to enhance your overall gaming experience. Now, we obviously have lots of randomized loot systems. Like, think of like the old Diablo games. You open treasure chests. It's not really a loot box, because the thing is, you couldn't buy the loot boxes real money. You had to play the game to actually unlock these pieces of loot. So having progression-oriented loot boxes tied behind a paywall, or at least done via like a small premium currency trickle, and then you can open, obviously you can buy more premium currency to open more. But when it's hindering your ability to progress in the game and you can purchase it, it's changing the dynamic of the game significantly, because you're no longer grinding for it. If, say, all the rare machine in Puzzle and Dragons, you had to actually earn each roll. There was no way to purchase more. It'd be a completely different game and probably a completely different business model overall. But in the case here, we now have ways to pay to win, so to speak. And this is detrimental possibly in the long term, because say there are spending customers. You think, oh, I have $50. I want to like put it towards the game that I like to play and want to support them. You put your $50 in, you roll all those various loot boxes, and you get actually nothing you wanted, and you feel a little cheated out because you put money in, but you got none of the expected return you were hoping for. And that becomes a form of gambling, and it can open a lot of unusual doors and windows. And like I mentioned before, like EA Games, they basically made the Star Wars Battlefront game, which was a very heavy loot box progression-oriented system that also forced you to pay for the game at the same time. So all those negative aspects basically got brought into light, and then in Europe, they've actually been cracking down on loot boxes, and they've labeled them as gambling, so they can't be involved in video games anymore. So these business models have to change or shift. And this is a strong, probably indication of why the European server in Puzzle and Dragons is stopping Magic Stone purchases very soon, because they're either going to be shutting down the server or completely restructuring their IAP model to accommodate these laws and regulations to be legal on the European App Store. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. I know just as much as you do, but I feel like that is the strong correlation between the changes of mobile games or gaming laws in Europe. So now we talk about Apple. So in Apple, like Apple's one of the largest primary platforms for playing mobile games. And they're now forcing developers to basically disclose the true rolling or summoning rates for these gacha style games. And it will then allow players to make informed decisions as to whether or not they want to actually spend their real life money on this game. Because if you know the chase card you really want is 1%, you at least know the odds. So you are gambling, but it's more informed gambling. I guess there are gray areas as well. Like you think, well, I open up a bunch of Pokemon cards, for instance. You don't know what you're getting, but you know the relative rates, so to speak. You don't know the true rates necessarily. Maybe you do, I'm not sure. But the idea is, at least with Pokemon cards, you open the pack, you have the cards. You can buy those cards secondhand to have that physical property, whereas this is all digital property. And is it even your property at the same time? I don't even know. It could be gray lines. But the point is, Apple is forcing developers to disclose the true rolling rates. And in Puzzle and Dragons, we've been able to guesstimate what the rolling rates have been for various events just by large sample sizes of thousands of rolls across many different players. And it's not official, but it's a good indication. But when Gung-Ho is forced to officially disclose their rolling rates, they want to obviously make themselves look as ideal as possible. And this is why I feel that the Rare Machine Renewal has come about, because it's going to change how the Rare Machine functions right before they're forced to disclose. So, Puzzle and Dragons Rare Machine Renewal. So, basically, taking all those points into consideration, I feel like Gung-Ho has unveiled this new Rare Machine Renewal across all regions at the same time. Now, historically speaking, North America, Europe never gets any update at the same time as Japan. We're always a couple of versions behind. So, if this was truly a Rare Machine Renewal with no ulterior motive, so to speak, we will get that 2 to 3 months later. We've seen this happen before. Like the Rare Machine did take out, say, the late bloomer dragons, other like 3 stars and like the golems and mystic knights, all those random stuff that got taken out over time. But this was done in a delayed fashion. We got this 2 to 3 months after Japan did. But only this time we're actually getting the Rare Machine Renewal at the exact same time. It's being unveiled across all platforms. So obviously Gung-Ho has the power to give us content at the same time, but they're doing so, I feel, for different motivations at the same time. Maybe it's going to improve the rates as well for us, might as well. But the Rare Machine Renewal does provide quite a few notable changes. First off, there's going to be no more 4-star eggs. Like, tons of them are actually taken out of the Rare Machine, I believe, permanently. So, like how the late bloomer dragons were taken out and you actually can't acquire them anymore except for like a gift of something dungeon, a lot of these 4-stars are being pulling out. So this would normally be a great thing, which it is actually, and there's only a couple standout 4-stars that are really worth mentioning. It's the Exahydra and the 3-turn Bind Clearing Dragon Knights. Like, they at least have reasonably nice inherits, but again, we won't really miss them, at least, because like for the most part 4 stars are lackluster. But in addition to all of that, numerous 5-star Godfest exclusives will now be restructured into normal 5-star statuses. So they become almost like 5-star Pantheons, but they were 5-star Godfest exclusives. So they still retain the same amount of monster points for their sale price, but their rolling rates will be changed, and they'll be available at different times, because you don't have to only roll in a Godfest for these cards. So maybe this will change the rates, improve or lower, I don't know, but notable 5 stars that are being shifted are Green Odin, Saria, Erd, and Verdandi. So all of this is basically going to turn silver eggs into gold eggs, basically. So gold becomes the new silver, so to speak, and 6 stars will still be the chase cards. And in addition to the Rare Machine Renewal, there's going to be an overhaul as to how Godfests are featured. So basically, in addition to the Rare Machine Renewal, all Godfest will now follow a different format. They're no longer saying rate up or rate increase by XYZ amount. They are saying highlight. And I'm not sure if this is legal jargon for certain things, but it's saying highlighting. Maybe it doesn't mean it's at a higher hit rate, but they're just being highlighted or featured. But I'm not sure why they use the word highlight, because that sounds a little odd in my head. Like, it's featuring, highlighting it. Like, I don't know, in my head it sounds like an unusual choice of words. And for these Godfests, it's going to highlight certain 6-star Godfest exclusives, not all of them, just a pool of them, and those will be available for the Godfest along with the Rare Machine Renewal. And the Rare Machine will actually be undergoing a cyclic pattern, because it looks like it's going to follow this template. We're going to have featured 5-star Pantheon cards that rotate in the Rare Machine. We'll have 6-star non-Godfest exclusives rotating as well at the same time, but available at all times. A lot of junky cards that are still 5-star base cards, but we don't really want, that are going to remain permanent, probably across all rotations. And then some 6-star Godfest exclusives sprinkled in for these Godfest events. The Godfest exclusives, or the 6-star ones, will rotate for Godfest, but only be available during Godfest. The 5-star Pantheons rotate, but they can be available at all times. You don't have to roll just in a Godfest to acquire these 5-star Pantheons if they are highlighted. And same with those 6-star non-Godfest exclusives. So things like 6-star Pantheon cards, or things like Carrot, Silk, those sort of ideas, those cards do get featured or highlighted in the Rare Machine, but not only during Godfest. So basically this new format essentially will be greatly condensing the pool that we can roll from, because if they're not highlighted in the post by Gung Ho, you cannot actually roll those cards. So for instance, say you only wanted, say, Greco-Roman 1 Pantheon, and you really wanted those cards, you wait till they're highlighted in the Rare Machine, and obviously with a nice and a Godfest occurring alongside, and then you roll. Because in theory, because the pool is smaller, you're more likely to at least hit the target card you were aiming for. So let's say even if they don't even change the rates whatsoever of like getting trash cards completely, as well as 5-star Pantheon cards, the fact that, like, say it's 50% trash cards and 30% 5-star Pantheon cards, let's say hypothetically, because the 5-star Pantheon cards have so many less of them featured, because basically instead of having like what 20-30 different Pantheons always available, we now have, say, 5, let's say hypothetically. So you're significantly more likely to roll those specific Pantheon cards in these new Godfest formats. So that can be good for people who are chasing specific cards, because our pool is smaller. Maybe the same odds of rolling a 5-star Pantheon card, but out of that pool of 5-star Pantheon cards available, at least it's smaller, so therefore a higher hit rate overall. Now, if you do want, you can click and look at the official Gung Ho North America post. You can look at their other posts as well. So with all that being said, do this upcoming event. I'm not sure how I'm going to do these formatting. I'm going to see how things pan out. At least I know people will do lots of rolls and get kind of a rolling sample for us to judge or guesstimate if these are worthwhile. And also it gives me more time to think of what kind of format I can do to introduce it, because it's kind of messy now, everything I have. So in conclusion, basically the landscape of Puzzle & Dragons is quickly changing. And amusingly enough, when I wrote this article, I was in the middle of writing another article, kind of just highlighting and summarizing all of my experiences I've had and how things have changed over time, my 1,500 plus days of playing Pad. So overall, like, I do feel that the clampdown on loot boxes has impacted gacha-style games, including Puzzle & Dragons, in terms of like laws and regulations from Europe, as well as disclosing from Apple's end. So let me know what you think about all these changes in the comments below. Hopefully you all have a fantastic day. I wish you all the best of luck in your own Pad adventures, and happy puzzling. On a side note, I do not know what's going to happen to Pad EU, so don't even bother asking.